Hi, I'm James Shillinglaw for Insider Travel Report, and I'm here today with a wonderful, interesting new property. It's in Cartagena, Colombia. And this is with Portia Hart, who's the owner and manager of Blue Apple Beach. And what is all that about? Well, you're going to have to stay tuned because you'll find out about that and more on Insider Travel Report. Portia, first of all, it's great to meet you, albeit virtually. Though we're talking about maybe I'll be down there, so we'll get a chance maybe later in the year. But tell us a little bit about Blue Apple Beach and where you are.
So you got it right. We're in Cartagena. And I love that you said Cartagena because quite often I'll be speaking to people from North America and they'll say Cartagena because that's what Michael Douglas said a million years ago.
Oh,
Uh,
okay. Well,
so you get full marks for getting it right. We're actually located on an island called Tierra Bomba. And Tierra Bomba is about 10 minutes by boat away from Cartagena. So I'm right now, if you look behind me, I'm in the city.
okay.
I'm not on my beach, unfortunately. I had to come back today for some meetings. But yeah, we opened in 2016.
Hmm.
So we're new to you, but we're not completely new.
Right.
And we're a small 11 key property.
Really? Yeah, very small. And
Very small.
so you're kind of a refuge away from the city on your own private island. That's amazing. I love that. Now, can you tell us a little about you? You did start the history of the resort. You started in 2016. Why was the name Blue Apple Resort?
Well, actually, when I first came to Cartagena, I didn't speak any Spanish, and I just came kind of as a clueless tourist.
Right.
And one of the things I noticed when I was speaking to other clueless tourists was whenever we'd done something really great and we were trying to recommend it to one another, no one could remember the name of anything in Spanish. And this was, I'm kind of showing my age, but this was before Instagram had really, really taken off.
Got it.
But in Colombia, the internet websites were not such a big thing. And so people would be saying, yeah, I was at this place yesterday and it was called like Casa, no sé,
Casa,
Casa.
usually a casa, right?
And so I said, if I ever start a business, one thing I'm going to do is I'm going to give it an English name
Mhm.
so that clueless foreigners like me who don't speak Spanish can remember it well enough to recommend it to somebody else. But on the other side, obviously, I really wanted Colombians to come to my business. I've always wanted to run properties that are points of connection
Right.
and not isolated resorts just for foreigners. And so I was like, well, I have to assume that not every Colombian person speaks English. So I'm going to have to pick some English words that are, kind of simple to remember.
Right.
And actually, my business partner is from New York.
Oh,
And so we were joking around that it was the big apple on the beach and it was the blue apple on the beach. And we thought everybody knows the colors, everybody knows the fruits. The foreigners will remember it, and it shouldn't be too tricky for non-native English speakers either.
that's great. Now, you said you arrived in Colombia about 10 years ago. Now, tell us a little bit about yourself. Where are you from originally, and what's your background in hospitality?
Well, I'm a bit of a mix these days. I was born in the UK, which you may or may not hear from the accent.
I
I
do
always
hear
think it's
that.
faded quite a lot, but I left the UK nearly 20 years ago.
Okay.
I studied Japanese and languages at university, but my first job was working as a PA in Monaco because I wanted to work somewhere where the weather was good. That was my only criteria. I went to university in Scotland. I lived for a year in London. There was a lot of rain. Um, and I did not do very well with it. My mother is from Trinidad and Tobago, so I've got a very strong Caribbean side. And I landed this job in Monaco, and 8 years later, I was still there. Only I was no longer a PA. I was actually the COO of a yacht brokerage company.
Okay.
So we were working with sales of yachts, charter, project management, and construction. And so my, I suppose, introduction to hospitality was through that. I never worked on board yachts. I was in the office.
Mhm.
But obviously you get a huge insight into holidaying really at a top level.
No, that's amazing. A great story. And of course, the culmination of that is you got recognized by Condé Nast Traveler, your property as in the Reader's Choice Awards, and also yourself, you were recognized as a pioneer changing the future of travel. How did all that happen?
I think mainly because I'm the only person ever to have left Monaco and come to Latin America.
Okay.
Everyone else does it the other way around. No, I think one of the things that has, set me in a really good position here is that I was born in a privileged place. I was born in the UK. I've had lots of exposure to tourism at a really, really high level. But then when I came to Colombia, it was really, I mean, it was really humbling, like seeing what a country was doing as it was just coming out of a very difficult time
Sure.
and seeing how much desire there was to do tourism really well, but also the need to do it in a way that wasn't harmful and a
Right.
need to do it in a way that wasn't exploitative of local people. And so I think the reason that we've been recognized for some of the things that we do is that we try to run our business in a way where it's a luxury experience,
Mhm.
but also entirely sustainable in the sense that we aren't causing damage to the environment around us and we aren't harming our local community. So the idea is the tourist wins, the business wins, and also the place where we are wins. And I think we kind of dived into that at a time when not that many other people in the industry were doing it.
Mhm.
So we started up a glass recycling center in Cartagena when nobody had ever recycled glass here. We certified as a B Corp, and we were the first island resort in the world to certify. So I guess that's why. Sort of, I don't want to call myself a pioneer. I think it's just I come across an obstacle and I just keep going at it until I've solved it.
No, that's fantastic, and to be recognized by Conrad's Traveler for this is amazing, and so it definitely puts your resort on the map pretty quickly. So,
It was an honor, honestly, very surprising, but also reassuring because sometimes you do ask yourself, am I completely insane?
no, because you still have that property to show it. Now, let's talk about that. You said you have 11 rooms or suites. Talk us about the accommodations.
So actually, Blue Apple was a holiday home owned by a Colombian family, and they built it to enjoy weekends. They live in Cartagena, and in Cartagena, the culture is very much at the weekend, a bit like I suppose maybe New Yorkers go up to the Hamptons.
Sure.
Colombia, Cartagena people jump on the boat and they go to the islands. And this family, the kids had grown up. And I met dad, and he was telling me that, maintaining a house in the islands is expensive and it's a real pain. And every time he was going, he wanted to have a nice weekend, but he spent most of his time kind of changing light bulbs and fixing things that were falling apart.
Right.
And he was just really keen to have someone else take it over. So we signed a lease. And we gradually set about converting what was a private holiday home into a small property. And it still very much has that feel. So it
Got it.
feels like somebody's home, and it's something that we've worked very hard to maintain. So there's one main house, which has 5 bedrooms in it. And then we've built 6 independent standalone bungalows, which here we call cabañas.
Okay.
And we're set on about 3 hectares of land. So there's a lot of greenery, there's a lot of space. I actually spent the pandemic at Blue Apple, and we were able to.
That sounds like the perfect place to do it.
Well, exactly. We were able to socially distance, having 18 people on property and each one of them living in their own structure.
Got it. Got it. So that's great. So those are the accommodations, and I assume because it is a luxury property, they have all the wonderful amenities and comfortable, and then some are fairly large, right?
I am very bad at talking about amenities because I always work on the premise that you expect a basic level. And if you're in our market, we're going to give it to you. So yes, we have hot water, we have air conditioning, all of our linens are 600 thread count. Our accommodations are all quite large. I've always called it kind of barefoot luxury. Given that I come from the yachting industry,
That's a type of luxury.
I was moving away from kind of covering everything in gold. And moving into how we can make this extremely comfortable. And more than anything, we're focused on service and we're focused on food and drink.
Well, let's talk about that because you were on an island there. What do you have for food and drink? What restaurant and bar do you have?
Well, it's interesting. When I first opened, the general consensus was that in the Caribbean, be that in the island chains or here in the Latin American Caribbean, there's this understanding that the food isn't good. And I'm European. Well, before Brexit, I was European. I consider myself European. I spent nearly a decade living in the south of France. Food is really important. And just because you're on the beach, it does not mean that the food
Not
should
at
be
all.
good.
And actually, Colombian food is wonderful. So I know.
Colombian food is delicious, and I have to say, Cartagena has had a real, renaissance, naissance of the food scene over the last 10 years. And our chef at Blue Apple, his name is Pedro Mosqueda.
Mhm.
He trained in Bogota, but then he went and lived and worked in New York, and he worked in several Michelin-star kitchens
Okay.
before coming back to Cartagena. So our food is simple. We're not overcomplicating things. We're not a French ultra high gastronomic restaurant. We work only with ingredients that we can source locally. We make everything on site that needs to be produced. Pedro even makes his own miso from a local species of bean instead of using soybeans.
Mhm.
Everything that we serve, we want it to be, we call it good food. It's good for you and it's good for the planet. So it should be delicious. It should also be healthy and it shouldn't cause harm. And our food is really, I have to say, it's what we're known for. And I'm really pleased that more and more clients are coming to us and they're saying, I was expecting the food quality to drop because I'm kind of on a beach, I'm on an island, I'm in the Caribbean. But this is genuinely one of the best restaurants in Cartagena.
Wow. So do people come from who are not staying there or not? They do come
Yes.
over. Yeah.
So a large part of our business, actually around 50% of our business comes from people coming for lunch because we have
And I
such a good
assume, you can eat there at the restaurant as many times as you want, but it's easy to get into Cartagena to go.
yeah.
Yeah.
It's a 20-minute boat ride. And actually, for the last couple of years, we've also been running a series of pop-up dinners where we invite chefs from around the world, top chefs in their own countries and in their own
Wow.
cities. And they do a four-hands dinner with Chef Pedro. And they're only 24 covers, so highly exclusive. And they sell out. I've got one coming up in 2 weeks' time, and we've got a wait list for it. So
Really?
yeah, people had to get on a boat and come over to the island for dinner.
Well, that sounds great because you bring in the special guest chefs. That's amazing. Now, let's talk a little bit about what other things do you have at the resort in terms of facilities? You have pools, beach, spa, fitness center, things like that?
I mean, yeah, you can't have an island property in Cartagena without having a pool. So I'd say the pools are kind of the nucleus of the property. We have a small outdoor gym and yoga area. We're quite popular with yoga retreat leaders.
Right.
And so we've got a lot of spaces that are dedicated to that. And then what I love most of all, the two things that I enjoy doing myself, we have 5 horses on property. So we're
Oh,
able to
wow.
offer horse riding across the island for all levels, not only for experienced riders. And we're actually a paddy dive resort. So we have an on-property dive school. And really excitingly, we have a house reef, which is only a 5-minute swim away, which is quite unusual. And it's one of the healthiest reefs in the Cartagena region. So
Okay,
I spend quite a lot of time under the water.
but you don't have a spa specifically or not?
We don't actually have a spa. I have to say it's on my list of things to add.
Okay.
But we do have 3 masseuses on property so that
Oh,
guests can
great.
have
So you can do
massages
the
in their
massage
room.
thing. Yeah. No, that's fantastic. So it sounds like you have full service. You got everything you need on the island.
Even internet. You
Even
have
the
to
internet.
check
Yeah.
it
Well,
out.
for me, that's always essential. It's crazy that life is run by internet these days. But, if I don't have internet, it's going to be a bad day. That's for sure. But yeah, I mean, everybody needs to be connected, right?
Yes. And I mean, we do encourage our guests, if you want to disconnect, you can hand us your electronic devices, we'll take care of them. But I have to say, connectivity is super important.
Let's talk about something we discussed earlier, which is sustainability. And how have you started talking about it? How have you turned Blue Apple Beach into a sustainable resort? I know you're dealing with wastewater, local projects, coral regeneration. You have single-use plastics, sourcing local food, and one of those things they had was paying a fair wage to your staff. But these are all things that are really important. So how have you brought that all together?
Our journey into sustainability or regeneration, whatever buzzword you want to use, I call it kind of impact or just operating
Right.
responsibly, really started out of necessity. So the island where we operate, although it's very, very close to Cartagena, actually is almost entirely off grid. So when I got there, we had just gotten electricity, but the electricity is pretty unstable.
Right.
There's no running water on the island. We're not connected to mains water. So that means no water in, and it also means no water or sewage out. And I only got gas for the first time last year after 8 years of operation.
Wow.
So we had to work out really quickly how we could run the infrastructure of the place in the most efficient way possible. And I think that quite often sustainability can almost be inter-exchange with the word efficiency. So like, don't be wasteful. So we put in solar panels so that we weren't so reliant on grid electricity. We have our own water making machine. We have a completely closed loop wastewater management and processing system so that we can be sure that we're not polluting anything with wastewater. But that also allows us to generate lots of water to use to water the gardens.
Absolutely.
And so, yeah, waste was a massive one, and it was really where we started because there was no municipal waste collection service. So, of course, what do you want to do? Minimize the amount of waste you're producing because I don't want to pay to put it on a boat and drive
Sure.
it back to Cartagena. And so that was where we got really, really innovative. Actually, for every 100 pounds of waste that arrives at Blue Apple, 87 of them are processed. So only 13 go to landfill.
That's amazing.
And we do that by composting, we do that by recycling. We actually recycle our glass on property. Our cabañas are built with cement that was made with our glass sand. So if you go to Blue Apple and you have a bottle of wine, it'll be crushed into a fine sand on site, and that can actually be used for sustainable construction. The filters in our pools, instead of having sand that we buy from someone that gets it from a quarry or a river, are filters that are filled with sand from crushed bottles on site. And we actually do that now for about 30 other businesses, and we have
Right.
4 recycling centers. And then that was kind of the environmental side and the immediate sort of infrastructural needs. But then one of the other things I saw was business owners like me suffering all over Colombia saying, well, it's just service is really bad.
Yeah.
People don't know what to do. And I remember my first year, we were having our office Christmas party, and there were only about 15 of us at that time. And a friend of mine, Carmen, she runs one of the best restaurants in the city,
Right.
said, why don't you have dinner with us? And I brought my team for dinner. And I realized how ignorant I had been. For most of the people that I was having dinner with, this was their first time in a restaurant. So
Really?
we were expecting people to work in a restaurant without ever having experienced it on the other side.
Mm.
And then that was one of the reasons that triggered, I suppose, this kind of drive that I have to make sure that every single person who works in my businesses feels valued and feels like they have a future, feels like they have opportunity, and feels like they have the right to go and be a client in another business. And you mentioned that you love Italy and you love traveling around Europe. And I think that's one of the things that makes Europe so special is you sit down at a restaurant, you can chat to the waiter or you chat to the bartender, ask them for recommendations. You've got
Sure.
lots of things in common. And I believe that we can only create things in common when we treat each other with mutual respect.
Sure.
Fair wages are the first part of that.
Absolutely. And a happy worker is going to be a wonderful worker, give great
They're
service.
a business partner, like an especially front of house team, they're earning tips, they're earning a profit share. So I want everybody that works with us to feel like they have a sense of ownership of the place
So
and that we're all
that's the
together.
most important thing, sense of ownership, and then it is your property, and you want to make the best foot forward when you're talking with guests.
Exactly.
I see that in the most successful resorts around the world. So that's a great way. Now, you also have formed what you're calling the Green Apple Foundation in 2018. It was. What's the mission and purpose of this foundation?
So the Green Apple Foundation really spun out of our need to do things in an environmentally more sustainable way. And then I would have conversations with other beach property owners, and I would say, yeah, well, we had this huge issue with our glass, or we had this huge issue with our waste, or we've been struggling with this, and this was our solution. And more and more people said to me, could you help us with that? And there was a cost associated. I can't run around recycling everybody's glass for free. But I felt like there was a conflict of interest if I were going to set up, and start charging all my competitors to do this thing. And so what I did was I kind of split it out and I said, we'll do this as a nonprofit. And the purpose of the nonprofit is to create jobs for people who otherwise might not have the opportunity, and also to solve sustainability issues faced by the hospitality industry here. And, I mean, a typical story from our foundation is I'll take our operations manager, Albert. So Albert has been with us nearly since the beginning. He actually was a part-time construction worker at Blue Apple during one of our construction phases. And when he finished the project, we were starting up the foundation, and Albert said, any chance that I can have a job?
Mhm.
Albert didn't go to university. He didn't study engineering. He's not a waste management expert by training. But today, Albert has trained around 3,000 members of hospitality staff in waste management.
Wow.
He knows how to operate this complex machinery that crushes glass. He is the go-to person for anyone in our city that wants to learn how to run their bar, hotel, or restaurant in a way that's more sustainable. And he's done that just by having an opportunity. So that's kind of what I say that's our purpose, is to take waste out of landfill, help hotels connect with local communities, find things in common, and also to create jobs that are not only jobs, but also dignified jobs that give people positions of prestige in their communities.
That sounds wonderful, and you're really doing a great job for the community. That is the definition of sustainability, actually. But now let's talk about what kind of travelers would be happiest at your property. What guests do you kind of target that you say you're going to like this?
It's funny because I often have this conversation with our marketing team, who's our demographic? And
Yeah.
then I step out of my office and I look around the beach and I saw, and this weekend was a great example. I saw a family who were there for a scuba diving trip and they also had Granny with them and she was in her 90s. And then there was another family who was staying with us and they had a newborn baby with them. I would say there's definitely no age demographic. Foodies love Blue Apple because they have a chance to interact with our chef. There's a chance to do cooking classes. The commitment that we make to serving up good food is really visible. And then I would say conscious travelers. So that's people that are like you, love travel, want to see as much of the world as possible, but are aware of the fact that there are ways sometimes where we travel without intention, we can perhaps cause harm. We don't know that perhaps we're staying
Right.
somewhere where staff isn't treated nicely, or we're eating in a restaurant that doesn't have a really good supply chain, or we're in a hotel where they're maybe flushing their waste into a local water system.
Mhm.
And so I think I always say, like, we're the ideal choice for foodies who want to travel guilt-free.
Oh yeah. No, and you've got a great restaurant and and plus you have a great location. So it sounds like, and it's definitely a getaway, you're off the grid a little bit.
We are, yeah, we are off the grid, but it's worth it.
Absolutely. Now, is there anything else you want to tell we go out to about 128,000 travel advisors here in the US, many of whom sell luxury and and are increasingly selling sustainable travel. There's more interest in it. Anything else you want to tell them about Blue Apple Beach?
I mean, gosh, so much. I think one of the things that I come up against quite often is that in Cartagena, we have an archipelago of islands known as the Rosario Islands.
Mhm.
And they're very, very well known. And quite often I'll be speaking to a travel advisor and they'll say, well, my client really wants to go to the Rosario Islands. And you guys fall just outside of the Rosario Islands. So you're
Uh,
on Tierra. And what I say is, you can take a boat, visit the Rosario Islands. It's gorgeous. You have
right.
these turquoise waters, white sandy beaches, but that boat is just half an hour away from us. And if you're booking Blue Apple, whether you're booking just one room or whether you're booking out as a private villa, the service and the level of food that we offer really exceeds what you're going to find in those islands. And the other thing that I say quite a lot to travel advisors, they might say, well, actually, I'm looking for a family. They're really just looking for a villa. They're not looking for a hotel experience. We've only got 11 rooms. So
Yeah.
actually, we do get rented out as a villa quite often. The difference is this is a villa that comes with, your own executive bartender, an executive chef, a dive school, a groom, four horses, a complement of 15 wait staff. It's a villa elevated beyond even most people's imaginations. And I think that's that kind of what makes us really special.
Well, yeah, down south you could get family and group buyouts, and 11 people, 11 rooms is not. It can fill up pretty quickly with. I know
We're quite popular.
my family alone could probably do that easily.
Right, exactly. I was going to say we're quite popular with family reunions, corporate retreats, but also actually we've had quite a few well-known faces who will book us because it's more private than being in the city.
Yeah.
So they can step outside the door. They don't have to worry about people coming up to them on the street. But because we're only 20 minutes away from Cartagena, they can pop into town for dinner, go for lunch and come back. And the feedback that we always get, and I always say, guys, we're not the Four Seasons. This isn't the Ritz. And quite often they'll say to me, this is much nicer because right now I'm sitting down having a cup of coffee with the owner.
Right.
And even though I'm a big deal, I can never do that in the Ojai Valley Inn.
That's absolutely true. Well, sounds like a wonderful place. I can't wait to get down there to see it. Where can travel advisors go to get more information about Blue Apple Beach?
I mean, I'm very old school, so we have a website. It's just blueapplebeach.com.
Okay.
Like any other operator in today, we've got Instagram, we've got LinkedIn, we've got all the channels.
Fantastic. Well, Portia, it's been wonderful to meet you virtually. Hopefully, we'll see you live soon. It sounds like a wonderful property. I heard about it, and I thought this is a really unique place that we need to cover, and eventually I have to get down to see it. So next time we do this, we'll do it in person on.
Please.
All right, you got it. Again, great to see you, and thank you very much for taking the time to speak with us.
Thank you, James. Thanks so much for the invitation and for being a platform for small properties like us to get out in front of so many people.
Absolutely. I'm James Shillinglaw, and this is Insider Travel Report.